All right, hello everybody. Happy Wednesday. We are halfway through the week here. Before we get started with today's webinar, Powerful Uses for Google Forms, I want to go over just a couple of housekeeping items. While you wait for things to get started, please feel free to take the 3-question survey kind of in the middle towards the top right of your screen. If you're watching the archive, we will still receive your answers, so we'd appreciate your feedback too. Before we begin, at the bottom of the screen in your audience console are multiple application widgets, sort of in the middle of the bottom of your screen there. And you are able to use them during the webinar. If you have any questions during this webinar, you can click on that Q&A widget and submit your question. We will try to answer these during the webinar, but if a fuller answer is needed or if we run out of time for some reason, we'll answer it later via email. We do capture all questions, again, including those submitted when watching the archive. If you are watching the live session, we encourage you to share ideas or ask questions through the blue group chat widget. It has 2 little speech bubbles on it. Michael will also be posting links to additional resources if they're needed throughout the webinar in that group chat area. A copy of today's slides and additional information are available in the green resource list widget. It looks like a folder at the bottom of your screen. You can expand the slide area by clicking on the maximize icon on the top right of the slide area or by dragging the bottom right corner of the slide area. You can minimize any of the widget areas by clicking the minimize icon in the top right corner of that widget window. If you have any technical difficulty, please click on the Help widget. It has a question mark icon and covers common technical issues. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available approximately 1 day after the webcast, and it can be accessed using the same audience link that was emailed to you earlier. Feel free to share what you're learning on Twitter using the hashtag that you see in the slides area, hashtag FEK12, or tag us in your post. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So my name is Katie Seamer, and I am the Director of Curriculum and Technology Integration at Forward Edge. And then we also have my awesome colleague, Michael Roush, who's helping to support us in the back end and share resources here. So who is Forward Edge? A little bit about us. We are a K-12 technology company, and when I say that, I mean that we do all things technology for schools, including selling hardware, setting up and managing wireless networks, and we even have our own cabling team that will pull and run cables and hang APs, move projectors, things like that. And now we've begun to focus heavily on the curriculum and technology integration side. That's where Michael and I come in. So once you have that technology in the hands of your teachers and students, how can you use it effectively? And so in the C&I department, we come with an education background and classroom experience. And in short, we offer visioning and planning services, provide professional development, and we serve as on-site integration coaches to a number of schools and districts. So, what are we going to cover today in this webinar for Google Forms? And just a little heads up, we do try to keep the actual presentation to somewhere between like 35 and 45 minutes so that we can save that back half or a good chunk of time remaining for question and answer so we can get right to the heart of what you want to know from this. So hopefully we will get to cover classroom uses for Google Forms to give you some ideas for those folks who are just starting. We'll talk about building your form, different types of questions and other elements that you can include in the form, different form themes and settings, new feature, making the form a quiz right inside of Google Forms itself. And we'll talk about some other new form elements as we go through as well. And then I'm really excited for those folks who have already been using Google Forms to really dig deeper and show you a couple of add-ons that you can use to enhance the functionality for Google Forms. So before we get started, I'll give you about 25 to 30 seconds to answer this poll. Just kind of curious, how much experience do you have with Google Forms? So are you pretty much brand new? Have you seen it once or twice, but maybe haven't used it a whole lot yourself? Or are you using it on a fairly regular basis? And this will just help give me an idea of how long I need to focus on a couple of things as we move through. So if you haven't answered that poll, go ahead and answer it. And again, those folks watching the webinar, you can participate in the polls too, and we'll capture those responses when you watch the archive. Okay, so it looks like everybody joining us today is sort of more in the middle. So about 70% of folks joining us have a little bit of experience. So that's nice to see that we don't have too many people who forms are brand new to. So you've all probably been using it a little bit. So just in case somebody didn't answer and you're not quite sure and you've never really seen a Google form from start to finish, the image on the left-hand side is a live Google form or a screen capture of a Google form. And as most of you probably know, when you make that Google form, it automatically sets up a spreadsheet for you. That's what we see on the right-hand side. And so in row 1, or each of our column headers, is each of my questions that I set up in the Google form. So as people answer the Google form, each person who submits a form, their response gets put on a brand new row and it automatically lines up in the correct column. So super, super handy for anything that you would want data or information in a spreadsheet format. So any sort of assessment that you may want, collecting feedback. I love using Google Forms to create a student roster at the beginning of the year. To collect all of their email addresses, and then you can create your contact groups in about 15 seconds just by copying and pasting the email column into your Gmail contact group. Same thing goes for collecting parent information at the beginning of the year or an open house. So it's all nice in a beautiful spreadsheet for you. Getting to know your students better. When I do this session in person in our boot camp, I always show this kind of feel-good video about Google Forms and a teacher, Andrea Kornowski, who used Google Forms to really just get to know her students on a personal level, and the students were blown away. So if you have time, find that video. It's just a few minutes long, but it's kind of a feel-good video about Google Forms. Obviously, any sort of survey you can use, any kind of entrance, exit ticket, bell work, interactive assignments. And then you're going to see when we look at responses that if you haven't been back to Google Forms in a while, you can actually see the responses right in the form, and this will all make sense when we get there in just a minute, but it will actually show you a breakdown with different charts for students' responses. So super easy, fast way to get an idea. Do students understand this topic right away? All kinds of ideas that you can use forms for in the class or in the school system. We could probably spend the whole time just on that, but I'll keep going. And yes, please keep sharing your ideas in the group chat if you have some other clever ways to use forms as well. So again, since most of you said that you have used a Google form before, I don't want to belabor the point too much for you. But again, just in case there's somebody hanging out there who's never seen this before, didn't answer the poll. So to create a Google form, I always go through my Google Drive, and then you just hit the big, it's actually a blue button now, not red, new button. And then if you go all the way down to the more icon, it will expand out, and then Google Forms will be that top option there for you. So that will create your brand new Google form. And then you want to go through and add questions. So there is this little floating menu, I call it, out to the right-hand side of wherever you're at in the form now. And the top option, it's a little plus sign, that will add a new question for you. That question's always going to default, if you add it that way, to a multiple choice question. But of course, you can change between a number of question types by clicking that multiple choice drop down. And then that image on the right are all the different types of questions that you can add. So just to clarify, multiple choice, students can only select one answer, or whoever's filling out the form, that's meant to choose one answer. If there are multiple answers available, then you want to use a checkboxes question. And new to Google Forms now is this file upload option. So that's huge. Working with students, let's say you have them out in a website, maybe, a math website, and they're playing a game or doing something, or, watching a play, pause it video, and you want students to capture their score and submit it to you. You could have them take a screenshot of that score from whatever website and upload it right into your Google Forms so you can see it there. So this upload tool is super handy. I think so many people are excited that they finally added it to Google Forms. So keep in mind that is pretty new. It's only been available for a handful of weeks. I've sort of lost count of when they released it now, but pretty new feature, so that's pretty cool. And also new to Google Forms, this is about as new as the upload feature, is this new machine learning technology that will guess the type of questions. So do you want multiple choice, short answer, so on and so forth. And then based on the words that you start to type in your question, it will predict answer options for you. So you can see in this little example here, because my question started with what day of the week, right below that question text, it gave me every day of the week to choose from. So if I wanted to add all 7 days of the week, I could have just hit that add all button and it would plug them in there for me. So again, this is going to continue to improve. So just constantly trying to save you time and make things easier for you. So that machine learning is also pretty new and going to be pretty cool as they continue to add and expand on that. Also fairly new, before if you wanted to add an image to Google Slides, you had to add that image completely separately, which you still can do, but now what's really awesome, especially for teachers of younger kiddos who maybe can't type, maybe pre-readers and writers, you can actually put an image right there in your question. And you can put images as answer choices. And you can do this for both multiple choice and checkbox questions. So new, you can put images in questions and answer choices for multiple choice and checkboxes, which is pretty awesome. This saves a huge headache from having to kind of go about it in this roundabout way like you used to have to do. So I'm excited about that. So obviously, you type your question text in there at the top, and then if it's, multiple choice, checkbox, drop down, you go through and put your answer choices in the option area. And a little tip for you, just FYI, if I am typing in and I am doing a multiple choice question here, so where you see it say option 1, when I'm finished typing my first option, if I just hit the enter or return key, it will automatically take me down to option 2 so that I can just start typing. You can also, if you have a list that you're trying to put for options to choose from, you can just copy and paste. So let's say that you want students to choose from another name of students in the class, and you have already created a Google form to collect your student roster. So you can just copy and paste all of the students' names from that roster right into like a multiple choice question, and it'll automatically plug in 25 different lines with all 25 of your kids there. So just a tip when you're entering answer options for questions to save you some time. So a couple of the little icons down at the bottom of your questions when you're adding question, that first little icon that you see on the screen there now, it looks like 2 little pages. That will duplicate the question and answer choice for you. So this is how I suggest to teachers if they want to do any sort of like a matching question, or maybe, choose the character for this description, vocab, anything like that. I tell them set up your question, maybe use a drop down type question, then put your character description or your definition or whatever it might be in the question text, and then all of your word choices or character choices as answer options. And then if you just hit this duplicate question button, all you have to do is change that character description or the vocab definition, and you don't have to retype all of your answer options again. So that will just save you time. Of course, the trash can will delete the question if you made it an error. And one thing to remember is that unless you go through and turn on, all you have to do is click this little button right next to required, and I put a little image of what it will look like. It turns purple when you have it turned on, but all you have to do is turn that on, and then students can't submit the form without answering that question. If that is not turned on, then students can submit the form, or whoever's taking the form can submit it without answering all of your questions. So especially if you need to grade it or you really need to collect information for part of the data that you need, make sure you turn the required button on. And the only way to really make it kind of be on without having to touch it on every question is to duplicate the question when you have the required button turned on. Because then it will go through and it will already be required for you. I do believe that there is an add-on that will go through and make all questions required, a form add-on, which we'll talk about add-ons in just a minute, but I have not actually used that add-on myself. So if someone has, please share your experience in the group chat with others. Next up, a lot of folks who have been using Google Forms don't know about these extra options that they have. So the 3 dots in the very bottom right of a question that you add, so of recent, I've heard people call it the Snowman. So I've kind of stolen that, and now I call it the Snowman. So if you click on your Snowman, depending on the question type, you will have different options. First, for every question that you add, you will have description. So I just did a little screen capture there for 2 different question types, what it looks like when you click your Snowman. So that first box up top is actually for the multiple choice question. So you see your first option there says description. All you have to do is select that, and then underneath your question, you'll be able to add help text. So for instance, if you want to say something about, let's say you're collecting an email address and you want to say, please use your school email address in like a smaller text underneath the question, you could do that. Or let's say it was a select all that apply question, you could say, make sure you choose at least 3 answers or something like that. So that's what the description is, and all questions will have that. The next thing I want to talk about, some questions will have the option to shuffle option order, meaning your answer options. So what we would typically think of, let's say for a multiple choice question, my A would be your B, would be Sally Sue's C. So it will shuffle around those answer choices. So good way to kind of switch it up to help prevent with student cheating if this is any sort of a graded assessment that you want to use. Next thing I want to talk about is the data validation. And data validation is really cool. That can allow you to do some awesome things with the form. So again, I'll take the email address question, for example. If my question type was a short answer question and I was using that to collect an email address, if I click my Snowman and then select data validation, I would be able to force users to enter an email address. Okay, so I would choose text, and we'll see an example of what that might look like here in just a minute. But I could choose text, and then I could say that it's an email address, and then I could give a little custom error message. So if they didn't have .com or .edu in their email address, then I could say, oh, please make sure that you've entered an email address. If it is a checkboxes question and students need to select at least 2 answers, then you can use data validation. Again, you just go to your Snowman and choose data validation, and then you can say students must select at least 2 answers or it won't let them submit. Or I know a lot of high schools will use Google Forms for different voting, homecoming voting, student council, all of that kind of stuff. You could say select no more than 3 choices. So all sorts of things that you can do with data validation. And then we're also going to talk about that last option that we see in there from our Snowman, the go to section based on answer, in just a moment. So a couple of tips that I like to give teachers, especially those folks joining us in Ohio who use Progress Book. These are some tips that I give when you are setting up your form. These are the things I say start every form with. If this is going to be any sort of a graded assessment or you want to be able to communicate feedback back to your student. Their first name, their last name, their student ID number, and their email address. You can automatically collect email addresses, yes. So now that that has become sort of a more popular and a well-known feature, you don't necessarily need to worry about the email address field there if this is for students, because you can collect those automatically in the settings. I'll show that in a moment. But these are just kind of the things that I suggest you start with. You want to make sure that for the email address, though, that you do one or the other. Either add it in as a question or automatically collect it. And we'll talk about that in a minute. And then if you do collect the student ID number, I know a lot of different grade books, Progress Book is one, that you can import scores as long as you have that student ID number. So that's just a tip to get you started. So before we go on to this next chunk, I've got another poll for you. Which of the following form elements have you used before? So have you used the add text for maybe a reading passage or long instructions? Add a standalone image, add a YouTube video, and add section or page breaks. Just curious to see what everyone has done before. So go ahead, take about 10 more seconds to think that through and submit your question. Again, if you're watching the archive, you can tune in. All right, let's see what people say. Okay, awesome. Okay, so all of those people who have done a standalone image before, you've probably been using Google Forms for a little while when you used to have to add images completely separate from the question or answer options there. So good. It's good to see that people have done that, and it looks like people will see something new here in a minute. So additional form elements that you can add besides just questions. And these you will add all in that little floating menu that we talked about at the very beginning. Remember, the plus sign in that floating menu to the right adds a new question. So that's where we're going to be looking for all these additional form elements. So to start, I'm going to talk about the section break, or you could call it a page break, because that's really one of my favorite features with Google Forms. So in that little floating menu, it is the very bottom icon. It looks like 2 little rectangles separated just a little bit. And what that will do, if you see on my screen, when I hit that little section break icon, it added a new section, or essentially a new page to my form. You see section 2 down below. So what this is really great for is, remember when I talked about in that Snowman and I said I will tell you about the go-to section based on answer in just a minute? Well, this, adding the section break, is what's going to allow you to do that. So what do I mean by that? So let's say I've added a multiple choice question, and I can either redirect students who got the incorrect answers to do maybe some more practice, give them a few extra questions, or maybe direct them to a page that has a video on it explaining that concept or how to solve that problem again. And then the people who got it right can continue with the form or the assessment here. So if I have multiple sections, I add them in my floating menu. Then to do this go to section based on answer, remember I click my snowman, then I would check this go to section based on answer. And you can't do this for every question type, but you can do it for some. So like a multiple choice question, I've got it outlined in a little red box. You will have a drop down next to each answer option. So here, who is Little Red Riding Hood going to visit? If you answered the wolf, then I want you to go to section 3 for extra practice. If you answered her grandpa, then you're going to do extra practice. If you answered the correct answer, her grandma, then you get to continue with the form. Okay, so again, ask questions in that group chat if you have them, but I do love this go to section based on answer. For reinforcement, you can also do any kind of, create your own adventure activity, student-led or driven activities over here. And then it's also, if you are doing this for any sort of, collecting parent information or, with your staff for any reason, sometimes everyone doesn't need to answer every question. So this would allow you to direct people to different questions. Also for assessments, using section breaks, if you want to add, group-like questions. So if you wanted to put all multiple choice together, you could do that. If you wanted to add an image with a graph or, a map and then have 3 to 5 questions about that graph or map, you could use a section break to put those all together. A video with questions that follow, so on and so forth. So I love section breaks. If you're not using them, check them out. And I do want to point out one last thing. Right underneath each section, it will say after section 1, what do you want it to do? So this would be, sometimes maybe you just want it to submit the form when they're done with that section if they're not redirected, or should they continue, or should they skip that section? So just keep that in mind when you start to use section breaks, that you need to redirect it at the bottom of the page as well to follow a smart sequence. One last kind of clever thing that you can do with section breaks is password protect your form. So again, we're going back to our snowman and we're going to use data validation. Okay, so if I just add one question, a short answer question, I can use data validation. I'll change it from number to text, like you see it on my screen now, and I will say that, the answer must contain, and then that third sort of a thing there where it says form password, that's the text that I made up myself and plugged in there. And then I'll add my little custom error text at the very end, please enter the correct password. So after I've got my data validation set up for the text that must be in the answer, then I add a section break. So when I would go to take this live form, I would not be able to move on and hit next to go to the rest of my form until I entered whatever I have there in the data validation for the text. So that's kind of a unique way too, especially for those folks who maybe don't have an LMS or, maybe you don't have a program that can schedule posts for your LMS to get the form to students. You could essentially password protect it so you can get it all posted ahead of time, but they can't actually see the questions and start taking it until they're in class and you give them the password. So just another idea for you. The next form element, again, if we go back out to our little floating menu out to the right, you'll see the text icon. So if you have any sort of long reading passage or long instructions for students, you want to add it with this text icon. If you just try to add a long passage as part of the text, the question text, or even the description in the question text, you can't add any sort of line break like you see here. Unfortunately, you still can't do any sort of formatting like bold, italicized, color changes or anything like that, but you can at least make it much easier to read. Also, when you do the text option, just as a heads up, you cannot embed an image in that text. You would need to do it as a standalone image along with the text feature. So again, remember, any long text, a reading passage, instructions, anything like that, you're going to want to use that little text tool. It's the second option in your little floating menu out to the right. And it looks like everybody already knows how to add a standalone image. In our floating menu, it's that third icon. It looks like the little landscape image view. You should be used to seeing it. That is the same icon to add an image in Google Docs, Slides, all of that good stuff. So if you need to add an image all on its own, again, if you have, let's say you have a PDF or a Word copy of an assessment that includes a map, a graph, anything like that, take a screenshot of that map and upload it as an image and then add your questions that follow. So just an idea. Next, I really like this. You can add a YouTube video with the little YouTube icon. It's that fourth option in fourth and last in that little floating menu to the right. So it does have to be a YouTube video, but I know, at least in Ohio, our state assessments now, a lot of them, even for ELA, there's no reading. Kids have to watch a video and then answer questions about comprehension on the video too. So embedding video in your assessments, awesome way to kind of get kids prepared and with multiple media literacies. So form, themes, and settings. This is where people can start to spend a lot of time having fun, changing up your form theme. So when you have added all of your questions, if you go up to the very, very top, it looks like an artist's paint palette. And if you click that, you can just change the color. Like before in my form, it was just purple. So I changed it to red to go along with my little red riding hood here. And so you can change the overall color just by clicking any one of those color icons, or in the very bottom right of all of those color options will be the image icon. If you select the image icon, that's where you'll get the picture that I have on the screen to the right. And Google has already put in there tons and tons of really fun headers for you. Some of them actually move, which are pretty cool. So you can select one that they already have. Or down at the bottom on that left-hand side, you should see upload photos. So you can actually upload your own. I know a lot of teachers like to do that, to upload a picture about whatever's going on with the theme that they're talking about. I will say I haven't quite figured out or found the exact dimensions that you need. I sort of just play around with it when I'm uploading my own form header. So if you figure it out, please let me know. The form settings. So a couple of things that I want to go over. So up near where we found our paint palette, you'll see a gear icon. When you click that gear icon, then we'll see what's in the middle of the screen now. The first tab is General. So right underneath General, you'll see here you can collect email addresses. So again, that's what I was talking about before. If you do not add email addresses as its own question, I would highly recommend then selecting this collect email address here. And forms, this is relatively new, will collect now email addresses of people who are not in your domain, meaning they don't have the same at forward-edge.net email address or whatever your school's email address is, but they do have to have a Google email to do that still, and they'd have to be signed in to their Google account. So going down, restrict to where you see Forward Edge on mine, yours would say whatever your domain name is. If this is going to be for parents or anyone outside of your school, you need to uncheck that. Again, for any sort of assessment or voting purposes, you could limit it to one response to make sure kids aren't voting multiple times. And then that very bottom option, see summary, charts, and text responses. Really great way if you just have a couple of questions, even one question in a Google form. You can allow kids to see the summary so they answer, hit submit, And then they can see a summary with a chart of what everyone else answered. So great way to kind of stem some conversation in your class. That next tab at the top, presentation, this will give you a couple other options. You can show link to submit another response. You're probably not going to want to do that if it's a graded assessment, but if it's any sort of like collecting parent information or voting, anything like that, that might be in a public place or a shared computer, that would allow people after they hit submit to just click that link and it would reload the form fresh for them. So you don't have to try to go back to get to the right spot. Down at the bottom in the confirmation message, you can actually customize what people see when they submit the form. So, and you can also, I've got the example here, you can include links to other articles, web pages, videos, etc. So if you want to redirect your students, so when they finish the form, what are they going to do? You can put those instructions in the confirmation message. And so I've got a quick poll for you. Have you used the new Forms quiz feature yet? So it's a new feature. It's been out for a little while now, but you can actually make, within Google Forms now, you can make it a quiz where it will grade itself. So I'm just curious how many people have used that before. Go ahead and take about 5 more seconds to submit. If you watch the archive, you can still submit. All right, let's see. So, okay, cool. So most people haven't. So let's take a look. It's actually pretty easy. So again, to make it a quiz, we're still in that settings area. So you still, to get there, you want to go to the gear icon at the top, and then you just click the quizzes tab all the way to the right. My recommendation, if you are going to do this first. If you're taking notes, make a big star next to this. Make it a quiz first. Otherwise, you're going to have to go back through and touch every single question to choose the correct answer. So to make it a quiz, all you do is click that little option up at the very top to make it a quiz. You can choose your personal preference options there. And then what you will do is when you go through and you're adding each question, over that first picture on the left, you'll see I have circled in red, it says answer key. So that will be added to the bottom of every question when you turn on that quiz feature. So all you do is click answer key, and then it kind of switches the view of your question to the top picture on the right where you can actually choose the correct answer. And then additionally, this is awesome, if you want, if I say add answer feedback, then I can actually right there give feedback to the kids for the incorrect answers and for the correct answers. I can also add a link directly to a video, a resource, article, anything right there for them for either incorrect or correct answers. So awesome way to give that feedback right away. This is also where you will put the points for the question. So that top image on the right, sort of in the top right there, it says 0 points. That is where you would put the number of points that this question is worth. When you're finished, you hit save back at the bottom, and then it flips back to the normal question, so you can continue to keep adding questions to it. So this is why I say make it a quiz before you add questions. Otherwise, after you go through and add all of your questions, you'd have to go back and set up your answer key for all the questions. So where do we see us, or how do we send the form and view responses? You send the form. There's a few different ways you can do it. It's the big send button up there right next to your gear icon. Up in the top right, it says send. So your first option is actually just to email it to people. If you have contact groups set up, you can just send it to your contact group. So if you have groups set up for parents, each of your classes, in one fell swoop, you can send it to everybody at the same time. You can also include the form right in the email. Just a little note, if you're using section breaks or anything like that, it will just pop them out to the form into a new window anyway. So just a heads up on that. The next way to send it is with the little link icon. So this is a link directly to your live form. So if you want to include this link maybe in a parent letter, or you can make a bit.ly shortened URL out of it, whatever you want to do, a QR code out of this link, this is where you would copy that link and share it with people. And then the last option, of course, you can embed the form, and this will give you the embed code right here. So if you have any sort of a class website or anything that you need to embed the form on, you can just copy and paste that code right there into the HTML of the website. And so where do we view responses? So if you look towards the top of your form, in the middle there, you'll see we've been on the questions tab the whole time. If you just click that responses tab, then right here, I've got a little chart breakdown for you. This is what I keep talking about, the little summary charts that you can allow students to see, or what it would show you when they're done taking it. It gives you a little chart breakdown right away. So you can instantly see how students are doing and if they are understanding the material. But I promise you that it also puts the responses in a spreadsheet. So how do we get to that? I've got the arrow pointing to it there. All you would need to do, it's also on the responses tab, but then all you do is click that little green spreadsheet icon. It'll then ask you, do you want to create a new spreadsheet? You'll say yes, and then that's when it will open up in that nice spreadsheet. You don't have to do this before you send the form. You can do it when people are finished, and it'll open it up, and there will all of your answers be. So super handy to collect and see all of the responses depending on what you want to do with it. So next we're going to talk about add-ons, and I'm going to have to do this fairly quickly because I want to save time for any sort of Q&A if people have questions at the end, but part of me just wants to let you see what the potential is with some of these different add-ons in Google Forms. So go ahead and check all of the options that you have used, just so I can see if people are familiar at all with some of these form and spreadsheet add-ons that you can use for Google Forms. It's okay if you've never used them before. Go ahead, take about 5 more seconds to answer. Okay, cool. So lots of people have used Flubru. That is a fan favorite to grade the form. I am going to briefly go over that one for those of you who haven't seen it. Lots of folks who have never used any add-ons. That's okay too. So cool. So we will cover just a couple of these. And for those of you who answered that you've used other add-ons for forms and sheets, if I don't talk about them, please share what you've used and what it does and what you think of it in the group chat so other people can get ideas and learn from you as well. So add-ons, what are they? Well, they essentially add functionality. You can use add-ons in a Google form, a Google spreadsheet, and a Google Doc. Okay, so we're going to just focus on add-ons that work with forms. So we can use add-ons in a Google form, or we can also use some add-ons in a Google Sheet that will work with our form data because our responses go into a spreadsheet. So if you're in a form, to add your add-ons, up in the very top right, you're going to click the snowman in the very, very top right next to your send button, and down at the bottom you should see add-ons with a little puzzle piece. That's where you're going to go to install the add-ons. Once you've installed add-ons for a Google form, they'll be in any Google form you use from here on out. So then you will see a puzzle piece next to your paint palette. So when you want to actually run or use it, that's where you're going to go, and you'll see the list of all the add-ons that you've installed. So just as a little FYI there. So the first one, that fan favorite that a lot of you have used, is Flubru. So the first thing that you want to do with Flubru to grade your form is actually take it yourself. Because when you take it, you are actually going to take it with all the correct answers and set it up as the answer key. So when we want to run it, You saw there I went up to add-ons in my spreadsheet because that's where my answers are in my spreadsheet. And I go to Flubaroo and I'll say enable for the sheet or run, whatever it says. In the first step, I'm going to go through each of my questions and say if it needs grading and how many points that question is worth. The next step, you select the form that you filled out as the answer key. And I always, for the name, I always type answer key just so it stands out really fast for me, but that's not something that you have to do. And that's it. You see that here it graded my form already for me that fast. So a lot of people still use Flubaroo to grade their form instead of Google Forms quiz option. Quiz is nice for really quick feedback, but Flubaroo just gives you a little bit more of a breakdown. It will highlight your questions for you in orange and you can set the parameters there. But I think the default is like if 60% of your students got that question incorrect, it's going to highlight that question for you. So you know to address that question again. So it just gives you a little bit more feedback. Then additionally, as long as you've collected student email addresses one way or another, you can go back up to Flubaroo add-on and actually email students their grade to give them that feedback back to them. So Flubaroo is awesome. That's it. I realized that was fast, but you saw in that little image there, animation, that's all there is to it. I mean, it really is that fast to grade and get yourself all of that feedback about your assessment. So again, Flubaroo is an add-on that you install in Google Sheets because that's where your responses go. And Michael has shared the link directly to install that add-on for you. You can also, one last thing with Flubaroo that not a lot of people know, when you go up to add-ons in your sheet and you go down to Flubaroo, in the advanced area, you can enable auto grade. And then you have a couple of preferences of what you want to happen. Do you want them to see the correct answer, so on and so forth that you can set. But then Flubaroo will run every time a student submits the form. So they could get that feedback immediately if that's something that you want them to get. So again, you can enable auto grade under the advanced options for Flubaroo. And for those folks who have never used add-ons before, if you are in a Google Sheet, if you just go up to add-ons there where that arrow's pointing, and then towards the you see all the add-ons that I have installed, but then at the very bottom you should see Get Add-ons. That is where you would go to install your add-ons from here on out. So the last add-on that I want to talk about today is probably my favorite, and it is called Autocrat. And I see tons of teachers using Flubaroo, which is awesome. I don't see enough folks using Autocrat. It's slightly more complex, but I think after you do it a couple of times, then you can get the hang of it. So Autocrat will allow you to create a PDF or a Google document out of a spreadsheet data or, essentially your form data. So here's a little example that I have for you. I am one of the co-leaders for GEG Ohio, and Stacey Smith and I were hosting a meetup, and so I created this RSVP form in a Google form, and I'm going to walk you through each of the steps, but so people would RSVP for our event, and then automatically my little PDF image certificate to the right was generated with their name. Okay, and I created that template in a Google Doc, and it ran, and boom, boom, it put in everyone's name, so then I could just print them all out to give them to them in person once the event was over. So how did I set this up? And if you're going to kind of open up another tab and do this along with me to check it out, you will install Autocrat in Google Sheets. Okay, so you install and set up Autocrat in a Google Sheet. But let's talk about how I set that up first. So the first thing I did was set up my Google form. Step 1, I set up my Google form. So then step 2, I could open up my spreadsheet. And because you're going to need those column headers or essentially that question text. So I've got my form on the left, my spreadsheet on the right, and then my column header there, I've got it squared off in red. So first name is the column header for that first column. That's going to be important. I'm going to need that. So I have my spreadsheet set up. Then, and I've got my spreadsheet on the left, now I've got my Google Doc where I am creating my template. So I used a Google document to create the template for this certificate. And then right there where my arrow's pointing over in my Google Doc, you'll see they look kind of silly. They're called merge tags. And they've got like 2 greater than, less than signs on the opening and closing. So that's how you set up a merge tag. And I literally just want to copy and paste my column header as the text that goes in between those little chevrons or those little greater than, less than signs there. So first name, last name, last name. So that's how I set up my template in my Google document. Then, once my document template is set up, I go to my Google Sheet where I open up Autocrat, and I will choose that Google document as a template. And I'm not going to walk through all of the prompts when you're setting up Autocrat because most of them are just personal preference. You know, do you want it to be a Google Doc or do you want it to be a PDF? Where do you want it to save these files in your Google Drive? That kind of stuff. But the most important part about Autocrat is mapping your merge tags. Okay, so again, those little column headers with your greater than, less than chevrons there are going to be the most important. So those middle icons, it looks at your Google document template and it pulls every instance of those merge tags it can find. Then on the right, those are going to be every column in your spreadsheet. Okay, so you're saying when you see this little first name in my Google document, then I want you to put the information under the first name column right there. So that's the most important part. That's what that part needs. Then every time someone submitted that Google form, it automatically ran that process for me. And boom, here's my final PDF copy that it saved in a folder, excuse me, that I was then able to just print them all at once. So certificates, great way to use Autocrat. What's another way that a classroom teacher might want to use use Autocrat? What about setting up a rubric for any sort of peer editing process, or even just you as the teacher? If when you are, maybe students are doing presentations or any kind of project, as you watch the presentation, you can go through and fill out your form for each student. Or again, I've kind of got the peer evaluation example up here for you. So this is my Google form to use for peer evaluation. I wanted to be sure to collect the evaluator's name and the student's name and email address of who they were evaluating so that I can make sure the feedback gets emailed to them. Then if you would scroll down on my form or the image to the right, then my questions were essentially my rubric choices so that it's really quick and easy to just go through and select the feedback. So that's how first I set up my Google form. Then remember the next step is to go through and set up your template document. So if you look, I essentially set up my table here or what I want my rubric to look like. And then in each place, I've got my merge tags there, remember, with our little chevrons, 2 at the beginning, 2 at the end, that match my column headers. You can see the spreadsheet down below. So I go plug those into each place. And then again, I'm going to go back to my spreadsheet once my template is set up with all my merge tags for my document. I'll go back to my spreadsheet, run Autocrat, set everything up the way I want. You can also, I can't remember if I said this before, but you can email as a part of Autocrat. You can email that merged document, either a Google Doc or a PDF, to the student. So I can immediately email, I could have emailed those certificates to people if I wanted to them. Or for this peer evaluation, I put the merge tags in here that match the column that has the student's email address for who needs to receive the feedback. So then when this is all said and done, I don't have to touch anything. The student who's peer evaluating doesn't have to do anything but fill out my Google form. And it's automatically going to email that student my filled out rubric. So here's a copy of that PDF. It merged in, I filled out the Google form, and it put all of those fields from the form I filled out there in their rubric. And then in that bottom right, there's a copy of the email that it sent that student. So hello, Katie, here's your rubric. Please see Jane Doe, who evaluated me with any questions. And then the PDF is attached. So that's another way that you can use Autocrat. It is an amazing tool with so many uses. Again, a little bit more complex, but awesome tool. So I see we just have a couple minutes left. I've got a few add-ons up there for you that you may want to check out. And it looks like some people may be sharing some things in the group chat here. Copy down is one that I want to point out that you use in Google Sheets. But what copy down will do, if you set up any formulas that go along with form responses, it will copy down that formula to each new row when a form is submitted, which can be super handy. So you guys can check out these add-ons if you want. Remember, you have access to this slideshow and the resources widget if you need it. Math teachers, you're going to want to check out GMath. You'll love that one. But I want to go through just a couple of things quickly. Our boot camps, if you want more training, especially on Google stuff, we have a 4-day technology boot camp. The next one's actually starting next week. We still have a couple of spots open. It will be January 26th and 27th and February 23rd and 24th. So it is a 4-day commitment. However, just for attending, you can receive 2 graduate level credit hours. Again, we host these webinars typically on the 3rd Wednesday of every month at 4 p.m. Next month, for February, it's Ohio's Educational Technology Conference, and we attend that. And so the webinar will be February 22nd, and the topic is going to be Google Sheets for Educators. And just as a little heads up, Michael and I are both presenting workshops on the Tuesday the 14th at OETC, and we're both presenting sessions on the 15th. So check out on OETC's website if you are going to that conference. We would love to meet you in person and work with you there. So check us out and visit us at OETC. So if you have questions, I know we're just about out of time, but share them in the group chat if you do, or send them in the Q&A so we can follow up over email. And before everybody leaves, I want to make sure that you have the link to get to the short 5-question quiz, and it uses Autocrat to generate a certificate automatically if you pass, and email it to you for a contact hour. So that's just bit.ly/FE webinar-011817. And I must credit Eric Kurtz. He's up in Northern Ohio, and I watched one of his webinars on how he sets up. So I learned how to use Autocrat to generate the certificates in copy down formulas from him. So I must give him credit, but that's where that comes from. So are there any questions before you guys head out? Cool. So it doesn't look like there's any more questions coming in. One question that came in earlier, I see that Michael answered Sue directly, but Sue asked, can you direct them to a video of more text in a new section? So yes, you absolutely can. So if you create section breaks, you can put a YouTube video, text, whatever you want in that section. And then if you add a question with it, like a multiple choice question, you can go to page based on answer and then direct them to another section that maybe has a different video on it or whatever you want. So yeah, you can absolutely do that. The key is to use section breaks and then go to page based on answer in your little snowman at the bottom of your question. Well, guys, if there's no more questions, I will hang out here for just another minute to make sure that people aren't kind of gathering their thoughts. So feel free. But if you don't have any more questions, that is it for today. Thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon to join us. Hopefully, it was some great information. When you finish that 5-question quiz, there will be a link to evaluate the webinar, or you can actually get to it from the resource list widget. We would really appreciate that feedback so we can consistently improve these webinars for you. So once you've got those things filled out, we will see you hopefully at OETC if you're in Ohio. And if not, hopefully we'll see you February 22nd for our Google Sheets webinar. Same time. And you can go ahead and get registered for that now on our website.